Welcome to the second part. I have Saiba with me, who is heading marketing for Zilliqa. And in this part of the video, we'll talk about the more marketing and the operation aspect of things. So, hi Saiba, how are you?
I don't know. Good to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Okay, awesome. So, can you give a brief introduction and a background for the audience of how actually what's your work experience and education background, how you got into blockchain and Zilliqa finally?
Certainly. So I used to be I have a computer science degree. Used to be in IIT Delhi and all, and then I worked with IBM for approximately 5 years. I was in Sweden. I was looking after payment solutions of major Fortune 500 companies. So what my work was, I had to talk with the banks, make sure their communication system was talking with our communication system properly, files were getting transferred and so on. So I was in the payment industry at long time back. Then I took a break, went to University of Oxford to do my MBA for a year, and that is where I got exposed to blockchain. And all of a sudden, it just clicked because whatever work I was doing, I suddenly saw this is such an efficient way of doing exactly the same work that I was a convert immediately. I could immediately see, okay, this has great use in the kind of industry that I was a part of. And I immediately began to explore how I could take this forward now. Rather than returning to the same industry which has been there for approximately 20 years, 30 years, banks are slow. They take their time in making changes. So rather than going to the same stream, how we can take this new technology, which is much more efficient, much more secure, and make sure that this goes ahead. And I started doing my research and found out Zilliqa team, which was doing some amazing work in this particular field, immediately got fascinated by the research and development which this team was doing. Reached out to them, had a conversation, and so that's how I joined the team.
So you reached out to the Zilliqa team and you joined the team.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So the main question, for the marketing part, that people have, and which is the community aspect. And blockchains require you to have an awesome community. And if you have this awesome community who believes in the project and who is very who wants to solve a problem, the project sustains in the long term. So how do you plan to for Zilliqa get the community on board, like the developer community, and maybe how do you plan to compete with Ethereum and other blockchain platforms?
Certainly. So given that blockchain is a decentralized platform, one of the initial things that you have to do is community building. Without community building, decentralized things cannot exist, first and foremost. Few people cannot run it. So it is a part of building the system. Ecosystem and system cannot exist separately out here. How are we going to build the developer community? It is, let's look at what is the value in it for them, right? There are basically two kinds of values. Business value, which actually provides them utility for the time which they will input into the whole problem solving thing. And B, technological value, where they can do something on our platform which they cannot do easily on other platforms. So for the first, the plan is pretty simple. To provide them business value, simply bring in major companies on blockchain. Not just companies which want to raise some ICO, raise some kind of a hype, and just speculate on the tokens, but companies which are building products which will be used by actual end users and be of utility to them in significant way. The second is technological value. And actually, technological value is much more interesting because there are plenty of things which you can do on Zilliqa platform which you would not be able to do currently on Ethereum platform or any other. Amrit, that you are interviewing parallelly, is actually leading the development of a language which is called Scilla, Scilla. And what it does is that it provides you a method of formal verification of the smart contract that you have made. That is huge. And how is that huge? Look at the current smart contracts which are there. There are two properties of blockchain. One, okay, that's not a property, but like general aspect. One, that huge amounts of money are involved for the smart contracts. And two, that the code is immutable. Once you put it on blockchain, you can't really change that. Now combine them both and it becomes a really big problem. Even the slightest of error will be exploited by the hackers. And this is what we have seen again and again and again in various platforms. Most recently, we have seen the parity incident where more than $300 million were frozen up. And this was not by some kind of a sophisticated hacker. This was simply by a new person in the ecosystem who was trying to learn smart contracts and was attacking the smart contract randomly, just giving the most basic commands to the smart contracts. And out of many, many commands that he was sending, something hit the target where it should not have hit. And the whole clause of that particular contract froze up. And $300 million were lost at that particular time. They're still trying to retrieve it, and it has become a huge debate in the Ethereum community. Now, on Zilliqa platform, if you had used Scylla language, what you could have done is that you could have checked the properties of the smart contract before deploying it throughout the life of the contract. And then you would have been informed that, okay, this and this property might have this and this particular problem in the future. Let's change it now before deploying it. So essentially, if you want your problems to be known by yourself rather than a hacker telling it to you by taking away millions of dollars of yours, then Scylla is of huge interest to you. In fact, any single developer who has built a smart contract and has thought of security would prefer Scylla.
Okay, got it. So you're tackling you want to have some applications as well that people can maybe help, and if they want to develop their own application, so you have value proposition there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Even for companies, it is a huge issue, right? If there is a major corporation which has many developers, it's going to be like really, really successful. It expects millions of dollars to be there in the smart contract. It does not want some person who is just taking up learning how to build smart contracts, trying out various different things, and suddenly causing the company millions of dollars of losses. No company wants that scenario. That's not good publicity for any single company or for the blockchain space in general. That's why we need to make sure that proper care is taken up while creating this. Scylla is secure by design. It has been created that way so that people will avoid making a mistake from the beginning, which has to be the case for any immutable decision.
Got it. And for reaching out to developers, do you plan to do maybe conferences or go to various events and reach out to all these groups, subgroups, like we have backend developers and we have all these groups. Do you plan to do that as well?
Absolutely. Developers are definitely a huge part of this ecosystem. If we want real applications to be here, this is one group which simply cannot be ignored. In fact, quite the opposite. This is one group for which we are rolling out the red carpets right now. We'll be having hackathons, we'll be having programs, we'll be having tutorials in various particular kind of formats. We'll try to make it as easy as possible for the newcomers to come into this particular language to build on Zilliqa. In fact, one of the features which is crucial, it might come in a few months later because we have tested thoroughly, but then when it will come in, it will become really, really big. That feature is portability. Mm-hmm. So what will happen is that if you are currently building on some other platform, let's say Ethereum, and you are currently working on Solidity, mm-hmm. You have already built up something, right? You have already built up something which is there right now. Now Zilliqa is coming in, which is offering you some better features. You check them out. You think, okay, this is the platform that I want to go in. Do I do the same work all over again? That is the question. But because of portability, what you will be able to do is very easily make sure that this kind of code, you just put it into some kind of an interpreter or compiler or something, and with, unless until your code is too complex, with a fair degree of success, it will be translated to something which will operate on Scylla. So with minimal amount of work, you'll be able to move whatever you have built there on Zilliqa. So this is one aspect that we are heavily working on, and we want it to be there to make the platform very friendly for any of the developers out there to test it out on the newer generation blockchain, where they can have more freedom, where they can actually have more users than the old platforms are currently providing.
Got it. And what about the mining community? Like we have in Bitcoin. So the major advantage that Bitcoin has is it has this very decentralized mining community, and or no, like it is like it has some centralization issues, but still, because of the nature of Satoshi and how it started out, it is quite decentralized, and there are people, a lot of nodes. It's like it's the biggest network out there in the wild. So how do you plan to like build this big mining community and have like a fair distribution of the computing power?
Definitely. So first of all, there are two questions here, right? First is like why miners will be incentivized to mine Zilliqa over whatever they're currently doing, and B, like how do we make sure that this whole mining ecosystem is equitable, that rather than being concentrated in one particular place, it's more distributed, like the other existing blockchains, let's say Bitcoin and so on. So let's address the first one first. Miners will actually find mining Zilliqa highly profitable for them because we have designed it that way. Here, you do POW, proof of work, not throughout the cycle, but only during certain times. You're required to do proof of work only to join the network. And once you have joined the network, your reward is assured, and the variance in the reward will be very little. And this is very different to the other blockchains. So what is the time requirement of this whole thing? Over 30 days, a miner would require to do approximately half a day of proof of work for Zilliqa, which leaves him all the rest of the time to do something else. So essentially, for any miner, what they can do is that they can have a simple program which keeps track of when a Zilliqa epoch is going to start. And they can just switch their hashing power at that particular time to Zilliqa, mine during that time, enter the network, get out, or at least take out most of their hashing power, most of their computational power from the system, and continue doing whatever they were doing earlier. So this way, they are assured not one, but two revenue streams at the minimum. So for most of the miners, of course, cost-benefit analysis is the basic incentive that they require to do any kind of mining. That's why it has been designed in some kind of a way that whoever the existing miners are, whether it be of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, or somebody else, they will have some good incentive to look into Zilliqa. So let's say if existing blockchains are decentralized, all of these participants will have good incentive to do the same on Zilliqa because they can just switch over. Like we do not need to attract too many new miners in order to support us.
Okay, got it. So like you have this in mind, you do think about the incentive structure for miners, and you want it to be like very efficient and profitable for them.
Of course. So as I said, like in blockchain, when you're building it, technology is only one of the part. One has to be like community building, and community has so many components. Unless until you think of what is the incentive of this particular person to be here, to act in this particular kind of a way, you have not really got your system in a particular place. That is what decentralization is about. We do not really believe people, but we believe their incentives.
Yeah.
That's how it becomes a trustless system.
Got it. So moving on to the partnerships, like I talked with Amrit, he mentioned Mindshare. What are some other partnerships that you're exploring with companies who are going to build on top of Zilliqa?
Absolutely. So the thing is, like again, I would like to emphasize something here, that partnerships that Zilliqa is forming are in many ways different than the partnerships that other companies are forming. because of one reason, which is scalability. Now, how it comes into play here, let's just understand it for a moment. Bitcoin and Ethereum, they currently have somewhere between 5 to 15 transactions per second as the throughput, which means that anytime more than 15 people are trying to use these platforms, there will be a queue and there will be some kind of an incentive for the prices, the gas prices to rise. Now think of it as like this. Like if internet operated in this particular manner, what would happen? There is some viral video which got very, very famous in, let's say, America. And you are a user in India who's trying to open his mail. And suddenly your browser is showing that, sorry, Arnav, I cannot open this mail right now because the network has been overwhelmed by people who are watching this viral video by this artist in America. And you have to wait for 15 hours to read your mail. Either that, or what you can do is, if you really, really want this resource so badly, what you can do is pay me $100 and I'll show you your mail. If that were the case, you would not be that incentivized to access the services. Internet would not become popular. And that is what is happening with blockchain right now. Whenever there is an ICO which is going on, whenever there is a semi-popular app such as CryptoKitty, which becomes popular for a few days, entire network gets congested. So either you have to wait for a long time for your transactions to go through, or you have to pay a really high fee in order to get ahead of the others and get your transaction done soon. Till the time that is the case, this will not become a popular application. And any major businesses coming to the partnership point, any major businesses who has been looking into blockchain and thinking, hey, maybe I want to try out this technology, come across this single problem. That if I start to tell my customers to use this, they come over this and jam the entire network, then my services simply won't be effective. So the reason that Zilliqa is providing nearly, it promises to provide nearly 1,000 times the throughput that other people are providing right now. For example, Visa is providing 8,000 transactions per second. In fact, in the peak capacity, even more than that. What Zilliqa eventually will be doing in its internal test has achieved 2,400 plus transactions per second, and it will be increasing as there are more miners who get onto the network.
Yeah, and there's like this, you have like a threshold, like some at till certain point number of nodes, the transaction increases, and after that it decreases.
Like you.
And for like Visa only does like financial transactions, but say if you are building a blockchain powered internet, or if you're doing a lot of transactions, you need to be even more than Visa.
You absolutely need to be even more than Visa for it to be like vastly popular. To beat Visa in popularity, you need to do that. So absolutely. And as more and more nodes will come into Zilliqa, that's the beauty of the protocol and sharding, that actually it will keep on increasing till a certain point of time. That particular spot, that sweet spot, is still to be determined by the development team, because they are running tests on this particular thing.
Yeah. So, like, can you name some partnerships if possible? Like Amrit talked about Mindshare. Like,
yeah, actually, so as I was saying, so what is the major difference between other partnerships and this?
Yeah.
When these companies look at the platforms, they unfortunately cannot go for the other partnerships because of the throughput requirements. So they either try to go for a private blockchain, or they try to do a little small proof of concept somewhere.
Right. Got it.
In Zilliqa, the entire conversation changes. They understand, okay, this can actually have a business implication. Here, we can like actually remove intermediaries in certain cases and make sure that this particular transaction is providing us financial benefit, not just for a proof of concept.
Mm-hmm.
So what is happening is that we are having multiple negotiations, etc., with partners that, okay, this is how we go ahead. Many of them currently cannot be told, but what we can share is Mindshare. So in Mindshare, it is one of the world's biggest advertisement agency. What happens is it takes the strategies of people that, okay, this is what we want to advertise, and then it makes the whole strategy. It makes sure that it is shown to the proper people. So if it's a gaming, if it's a gaming platform which is trying to advertise itself, it will make sure that it goes to the particular demographic. If it is a fashion platform which is trying to advertise itself, then that demographic might be completely different than the gaming demographic. And it has to make sure that it is going through. How to verify that, how to make sure that the entire transaction is happening properly, that somebody is not trying to commit frauds in between, and so on and so forth. There are many intricacies which come into picture. And this by itself is not one single application, but rather an entire ecosystem, because there are so many intermediaries who come into the picture, so many nuts and bolts which are beneath the whole thing.
So how, like, if not the names, can you like talk about how you are? What's your process of exploring these partnerships? Like, how do you reach out to new people and whom to reach out to? How are you seeing that? Who are the people that you reach out to maybe start building on top of Zilliqa?
So our first understanding is that we want to reach out to the high throughput companies, the companies which have high throughput requirement. So let's say if there is a stock exchange. So stock exchange has very high throughput requirements, and many of them are now considering moving on to blockchain. Australia was one of the first exchanges which thought that, okay, we should move to blockchain. But of course, these have, like, again, nuances to it. Some prefer private blockchain and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Then there are people in logistics. In logistics, there are many chains which actually prefer that whatever they're doing should be visible to everybody. Insurance sector, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And the thing to note here is that throughput, however, is not a requirement of one particular application. It is a requirement of the platform itself. What do I mean by that? I mean that think of throughput as the length of a lane, right, of the platform. So if there is a small lane and people are trying to go through that, your speed requirements may be different. You may be walking or you may be driving a car at different speed. You will still get stuck if many people are going through, right? But if it's a wide lane, then everybody can go at their own pace. There is no traffic jam as such. This is the same. The thing is, while we appreciate people with high throughput because it's a natural fit, but at the same time, in fact, any single tab which is currently in existence, and let's say if there are other platforms, let's say Ethereum or any such thing, they actually have a good reason in terms of A, getting more users, less traffic, and B, reducing the fee for individual transactions to switch over to Zilliqa. So essentially, our platform, because of its nature, has become much wider than what we initially perceived, because many people who just didn't want high throughput but also low fees have started to come to us.
Got it. And like, how are you like in the tokenomic aspect of things? How does the team manage? You did an ICO obviously, and you raised money. So how does that distribution manage, and how the tokens will be managed in the future? Because I think this is a question which not a lot of people answer, and many projects, they don't actually are transparent of how they are spending the money raised. So how you are doing that as well?
Okay, so we did a token generation event. There are 21 billion tokens which will come into existence for Zilliqa. And let me get back to the point that you mentioned, that many of the projects just don't mention this. I find that to be plain ridiculous, because blockchain is essentially about transparency, where people can see what is going on and agree or disagree on a particular thing. It has to be trustless, right? You have to share information. You have to beforehand say what is going to happen, and that is what precisely Zilliqa team did. All the information is currently out in the open, that how exactly the tokens will be distributed, at what time it will be distributed. Overall, it is divided into 3 parts. 30% of the tokens were allocated for operations of basically to Zilliqa and the holding team and the partners and advisors. It was being used to run the operations of Zilliqa, to support the research and development for the founders, for the holding company of Zilliqa, which is Anshuman, for the advisors and for the people who helped us do certain operations, such as consuls, who helped us with the token generation event. All of this is again very public. Anybody can check on this. Most of these tokens of this category are vested, which is to say they don't get released immediately. They get released after a certain amount of time in order to incentivize everybody to keep on focusing on improving the value of token by actually creating value for every single person. This is how industry usually operates. This is like standard best practices of the industry.
Yeah.
Let's come to the second part. The next 30%.
So how can you talk about like how much is the vesting time? Like, and do you have like this thing that they are released after 6 months or something like that? Like some portion is released after 6 months, next portion is released after 6 months.
Absolutely. So there are various parties involved in this particular thing. So for each of them, the vesting time might differ at different point of times.
And that info is on the white paper.
Like it is basically available. Either it is in white paper sometimes it is in the early blog entries also. So it's more than easily available. You just need to Google that. All this information has been released before the token generation event started.
That's great.
I think you have to do that. Any particular project which is like that is a basic hygiene factor. I'm actually surprised that many projects don't do it. That is the first thing you'll do for them.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so what's the next category? You were talking about the first.
So the next sector. So this is like 30% of the tokens.
Yeah.
The next 30% of the tokens got distributed to the early participants of the token generation event.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that is again like well documented, etc. The last 40% of the tokens, it is something which has not been generated yet.
Yeah.
Because this 40% of the tokens, they will be mined. Miners will bring them into existence. This is the reward, the incentive for the miners to provide their computation power, the memory, etc., to the entire network. Mm-hmm. So these 40% of the tokens will be released roughly approximately over the next 10 years. The exact time period will be determined, but it will not be released evenly. The first few years will be more heavily incentivized than the next years.
Yeah.
Because to promote adoption.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So yeah, I think we have covered quite a lot in this video. And thanks, Saiba, for your insights, and thanks for clearing up a lot of doubts that people would have and giving insight of how you're actually going to build the platform and building the partnerships in the future.
It has been a pleasure talking to you, Arnav. Thanks for having me here.